Imagine a world where insects were gigantic, where dragonflies had a wingspan of over 3 feet, and where millipedes could grow as long as cars. Well, believe it or not, this world did exist, and it wasn't that long ago. In fact, during the Carboniferous period, which lasted from around 360 to 299 million years ago, insects were massive, thanks to an oxygen-rich atmosphere that allowed them to grow much larger than they can today. But these giant bugs weren't just big. They were truly monstrous. There were dragonflies with a wingspan of over 3 feet, millipedes as long as cars, and cockroaches that could eat a human alive. So what was life like for these giant bugs? And how did they manage to grow so large? Let's take a look at this terrifying world and find out. One of the most fascinating creatures that lived in this world were the giant dragonflies. These dragonflies were true giants, with some species having a wingspan of up to 3 feet. To put that into perspective, that's about the size of a small dog. And they were also extremely fierce predators. With their huge jaws and razor-sharp teeth, they would swoop down on their unsuspecting prey and eat them alive. But dragonflies weren't the only giant insects that roamed the skies. There were also the protodonts, which were similar to modern-day mayflies. But unlike their mayfly relatives, protodonts were truly gigantic, with some species growing to be over 17 inches long. Just imagine a mayfly that size buzzing around your head. It would definitely be a scary sight to behold. Now, let's turn our attention to the ground where things were just as scary. On the ground, there were the giant millipedes. These creepy crawlies were truly monstrous, growing to be as long as cars and as thick as tree trunks. Just imagine coming across one of these creatures while walking through the forest. You would definitely run for the hills. But millipedes weren't the only giant insects that inhabited the earth. There were also giant cockroaches, which could grow to be over 12 inches long. These roaches were true scavengers, eating just about anything they could find. And they were also quite aggressive, attacking anyone or anything that entered their territory. So, what caused these insects to grow so large? The answer is oxygen. During the Carboniferous period, the Earth's atmosphere had a much higher concentration of oxygen than it does today. In fact, it was around 35% oxygen, compared to the 21% we have today. This high level of oxygen allowed insects to grow much larger than they can today. You see, insects breathe through their skin, as well as through a series of tubes called tracheae that run throughout their bodies. The oxygen from the air passes through their skin and into their bloodstream, where it's used to produce energy. The more oxygen in the atmosphere, the more energy insects can produce, and the larger they can grow. But it wasn't just the atmosphere that was different during the Carboniferous period. The Earth itself was also very different. During this time, the supercontinent Pangaea existed, and it was surrounded by a vast ocean called the Great Ocean. This ocean teemed with life, including many species of fish, amphibians, and reptiles. But the abundance of life in the oceans didn't just affect the animals that lived there. It also affected the insects that lived on land. You see, as the animals in the ocean died, they would sink to the bottom and decompose. This decomposition would release nutrients into the soil, which would then be absorbed by plants. The plants would use these nutrients to grow, and insects would then eat the plants and grow in size as well. In addition to the abundance of food, insects also had plenty of space to roam. During the Carboniferous period, there were very few large animals on land, so insects didn't have to worry about being eaten by predators. This allowed them to grow to enormous sizes without being hunted down by some giant beast. But as we all know, this couldn't last forever. Eventually, the Earth began to change, and the conditions that allowed insects to thrive began to disappear. So what caused these changes? The answer is the changing climate. During the Carboniferous period, the Earth was much warmer than it is today. This was due to a number of factors, including the high levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the fact that the continents were located closer to the equator. But as the period came to a close, the continents began to move away from the equator, which caused the Earth's climate to cool. In addition to the changing climate, there were also other factors that contributed to the decline of giant insects. For example, the evolution of bats and birds led to increased predation on insects, which made it more difficult for them to grow so large. Additionally, the breakup of Pangaea led to the isolation of insect populations, which eventually led to the evolution of smaller insects. So what happened to the giant insects? The truth is that many of them simply went extinct. Their bodies, along with those of many other creatures, were buried under layers of sediment and turned into coal, which is why the period is named the Carboniferous. Others evolved into smaller insects that could survive in the changing environment. But the legacy of these giant insects lives on. Their fossils can be found all over the world, and they continue to fascinate scientists and the public alike. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll discover that these insects didn't go extinct after all, but are still hiding somewhere in the world, waiting to be found. Today, we live in a world where insects play a vital role in our ecosystem. They pollinate our crops, decompose dead animals, and provide food for other animals. But insects are also capable of causing great damage, from the destruction of crops to the spread of disease. It's important that we understand the role that insects play in our world, both positive and negative. There are a lot of benefits to living in a world without giant bugs. First and foremost, it would be much safer. No need to worry about being crushed by a giant millipede or eaten by a giant cockroach. It would also be a lot quieter. Can you imagine the sound that 3-foot-long protodonts would make as they flew around? Plus, it would be much easier to travel. No need to worry about giant dragonflies attacking you mid-flight or giant cockroaches blocking your path. Finally, it would be a lot cleaner. Giant millipedes could grow to be over 10 feet long. Just think of all the dirt and grime they would track into your house if they invaded it. However, there are also some drawbacks to living in a world without giant bugs. First, it would be much more difficult to find food. Many of the plants that we eat today rely on insects for pollination. Without insects, we would have to find other ways to pollinate these plants, which could lead to lower crop yields. We would also lose a valuable source of protein. Insects are a great source of protein, and many people around the world rely on them as a source of nutrition. Without giant bugs, we would lose this valuable source of protein, which could lead to malnutrition in some parts of the world. Finally, it would be much more boring. Giant bugs are truly fascinating creatures, and it would be a shame to lose them. Just imagine telling your grandchildren that you once saw a giant bug as big as a dog. They would probably think you were making it up. So while there are definitely some benefits to living in a world without giant bugs, I think the drawbacks far outweigh the benefits. Giant bugs are a part of our natural world, and we should appreciate them for what they are. Plus, it's not like they're going to attack us unless we invade their space or destroy their habitat. So as long as we respect giant bugs and share our world with them, I think we can all live together in harmony. Now it's your turn. What do you think the world would be like if giant bugs still existed? Would you want to live in a world like that? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing videos about Forgotten World. Thanks for watching.